So in this section, we'll be looking at settings that you can apply to your DSLR before you actually go into the field, just to make sure that you get the best possible image out of your DSLR for the later grading in color or in Final Cut. So here I've got an image of the DSLR we use, which is a Canon T2i or Canon 550D. And as you can see, we went into the picture style settings and into the neutral settings and changed them a bit. I'm just going to show you why we did this. Now here I've got an image that comes up on the back of the DSLR, which shows you how the whites are clipped. On this histogram here on the right side, you see this spiked white line which represents the white sky here on top. And so this is overexposed, which means there's no information in this part of the image, which makes it impossible to work with in the color suite or in Final Cut Pro in the color grading. So ideally what you're aiming for is to expose your image so it doesn't clip the whites, which is the case here. So I'm just going to show you the same image properly exposed without the whites clipping. So it spikes here, but as you can see, it comes down in a curve. It's not just a line that goes to the edge of the side of the histogram and cuts it off, which means we've got something to work with here in color, because the end of the histogram is actually right here where my hand is now. It's not over here. If I just compare that to the one before, you can see the spike there, also indicated by the black in the sky. It means it's clipped, and just the properly exposed one looks like that. So what we did, we went into the picture style settings, into the neutral settings, and changed the settings here. Reason for that being, if you do end up with clipped footage, like here with a spike in the histogram, you've got those burned in whites baked into your clip, because it's not a raw file that you end up with. The Canon shoots and compresses your file into an H.264 file, which is a compressed file. It's not a raw video file, which will allow you to work with the footage in a much more flexible manner. So going into the picture style settings, you come up with this view, and it's quite important to get the contrast to 0, because as I mentioned, we're trying to get a flat image so that we can choose the blacks ourselves and don't have the camera decide for us where the blacks in the images are. Same for the whites, as you just saw. We don't want to clip the whites, because then we just lose all the information in the footage, and that means we can't work with it properly. We can't decide grayscales and go for certain looks. So this is a piece of footage that we recently took in Nepal for one of our documentaries. And as you can see here, this fellow is in front of a bright white brick wall, which on top of that is illuminated by the sun. So it would be quite an easy thing to clip those whites accidentally and lose all the information in those whites. But what we've done here is, just by applying those settings and using a grade filter, as I mentioned earlier, you can see that we still have all the information in those bricks. And what I can do now is, if I go here into the shadows and just pull them down, and then go into the mids and pull the mids down, you can see how we get even more information into the bricks. Whereas if those whites were blown, it would look more like this, and we wouldn't have any information in those bricks, and it would just sort of distract from his face. So just by having all the information in the whites, we can now work with the whites. We can decide what we want to highlight in this image. Same goes for the blacks, because I just pulled them down. I'm just going to go back to how they were. So as you can see on the left side here in the parade, they don't touch 0. That means they're still in the grays. There's no absolute black decided by the camera. So we ourselves can decide where we put our absolute blacks. So just going back into the shadows and pulling down the shadow here, we can darken the image ourselves, because we've got all the information left. There's nothing that clipped.